your tapping, Dom.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
My Mac is a very loud tapper.
Okay, pulling everyone in.
Yay! I'm here. And yeah, my camera still doesn't work.
Oh, we'll get there one day. Oh, such fun.
Yep.
Start the stage. Start the stream. Although I have no confidence that YouTube is going to continue streaming, but we're recording as well anyway. And if all else fails, we'll upload a recording.
Oh, so we're live on YouTube as well?
Yes, backups within backups, and I think Dom's recording as well. And we'll just natter on until we can feel about the beginning. But anyway, welcome everyone to the MonoGame Open Hours. I've actually lost count of how many of these we've done now. Is this our fourth? Feels like our fourth. But anyway, it's February 2025. We're still here, we're still going, we're still publishing. And still trying to engage with the community as much as possible. And again, as many updates as we can cram into the hour that we have. We also have another community spotlight with another one of our avid helpers, members, and all-round shaman, ArisTurtle. That's not his full name. ArisTurtle's his handle. Chris is his name. But hey ho.
No, last name is ArisTurtle. We'll go with that.
Yeah. Talking about all things MonoGame.Extended, particles, and 2Ds. And then we'll hit Q&A. If you have questions, please post them into chat. Please prefix them with the question colon so that we can easily and quickly identify them. And we shall get on with the world. So let's kick things off, as it were. And hopefully, I hope I may even have a voice this month. Who knows? Okay, so quick update. I think over to you here, Tom, is the new bounties and also the DX12 test PR that we've finally published.
Yep. So, yeah. Thanks, Simon. So, new bounties. I believe that right now we have... Let me open it up while we're out here. Probably should open this up ahead of time, huh? Be prepared. Unfortunately, I was not prepared. No, we're just doing this stuff live. So yeah, with there is the backend for the native backend for the content pipeline, which that bounty is still in a draft mode, but we're going to finish it up here. Basically, the same way that we're doing for the engine, we want to do for the pipeline, because it's another same sort of problem where we're always struggling to find a way to get a native library to work with C#, and we end up finding some third-party wrapper, and then we generate that third-party wrapper, then that wrapper becomes less supported, and it's extra complicated because now we have this wrapper, DLL along with some other DLL that is the native library, so we have two libraries that we're dragging around, and we have to build both, and it becomes complicated. So the idea is to have our own wrapper, at the native level, so we can easily extend to native libraries as needed in the pipeline. And this is everything: textures, audio processing, everything. Is the idea for us to be eventually, and to do it in a way that's a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more under our control, and also allow for a little bit more performance, and allow us to kind of control our own fate a little bit with this stuff. The pipeline is still important, while we are trying to make it easier to use the engine without using the pipeline, we're still pushing forward and making the pipeline better. So that bounty draft is kind of like the starting point of just setting the core of it in place. The base native library, being able to, we've kind of settled. Originally, the vision was for it to be like replace all the texture stuff, but it's kind of big like that. So we're kind of making this a smaller bounty. It's basically just setting up the library and just replacing one thing, the texture importer. For a long time, we've used the C# free image, system for doing that. So there's a C# wrapper along with the free image DLL itself, the native one. So this will kind of be changed where we're using the static live version of free image embedded into our own binary and using it, instead as the texture importer. As part of that, the current texture importer, if anybody's ever looked at it, has like a million formats, 99% which are not tested. Like if you go in there and look, the texture importer supports like all kinds of formats. IFFs, .jxrs, .mngs, like all kinds of, formats that no one's ever used MonoGame ever. So we're probably going to pare down. Like currently, it's using free image. We'll probably move to using the STD image libraries because they're small, compact, to the point. A long time, and they still allow you to do it, through some please and thank yous. But for the most part, DX12 is where they're at. So this has been a long time to get that running, and we had a bounty, I think, last year that got completed that added DX12 to the Xbox backends, along with switching them over to the new native AOT process. So that was completed last year, but it was before we got the native backend stuff in there. So it was done using the old methods of integration to native libraries, but it was out there. So what we've done, or what I've done specifically, is I've moved the DX, and this is part of the bounty for the bounty of it's part of, but not totally, the switch console runtime from brute to native AOT. It's kind of part of that bounty, because since I'm going to be working with this anyways on the Xbox side, I figured it's worth making this move. So basically, we took that code that was originally done for Xbox and we pulled it in. It was Xbox plus Windows GDK. We pulled that code from the private repo into the public repo. Now, yes, it's Xbox code in the public repo. That said, if you search for Scarlet on GitHub, you'll find many defines and mentions of Scarlet, as the code name for Xbox Series X. So it's not unheard of to have Xbox code out there. It's really not like we're leaking anything. It's all public APIs for the most part. You can find them on Microsoft's doc site. They talk about GDK on their doc site, which DX12 is part of GDK or is a element of GDK. So we felt like after going back and forth on how we should split this up and how we should make some Xbox stuff private, it was getting complicated. So I eventually said, there's no reason to do this. There's plenty of existing repos out there, Microsoft's repos, as well as, Microsoft employee repos that are out there that have DX12 code that include, elements where this section is Xbox specific or Scarlet specific or Xbox Durango specific. So we don't feel like there's a problem there. So we went with that approach because it's cleaner for right now. We could maybe make a change later on that, but we wanted to move forward at this point. And I only say that later because at some point Microsoft is going to start talking about a new console, and hopefully they have in the past, if they include us early in that process so that we have access to that hardware early, we might not be able to share any code, and that might be a little difficult to produce that and also share code with people, without putting them in public. So there might be a problem with that later, but we'll deal with that problem later. I really wanted to move forward. So with this, there's a DX backend that kind of mirrors the functionality that's in the Vulkan backend at the moment. It's under the same API. There's two different builds. There's basically a MonoGame.Native.dll that has Vulkan in it. There's one that has DX12 in it. Both of them use the same basis of SDL2 as the window handling and input handling. Neither of them have an audio system at the moment, but it's the same thing. So it kind of drops in as another replacement for graphics if you want to use DX12 on PC. There's a little bit of discussion that we need to work out, like, is this actually GDK or not? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Microsoft's definition of what GDK is, in my opinion, is very nebulous. So I'm not totally sure what we end up calling this, but at least the code is moved to the public repo there. And on the back end, stuff you guys can't see in public, on the Xbox side, the Xbox code is, I'm going to be pushing a PR there soon that shares this code. So the public code in the repo is shared with the Xbox backend that has private code. So it'll be one unified implementation. So there's not going to be DirectX code in the public repo and DirectX code in the private repo that are separate copies of each other. It's one copy. It's the one in the public repo. It's going to be used by both the private, Xbox implementations as well as the Windows implementation. So it'll save us time and effort on fixes that are, separate there. It does mean we need to be more thorough about testing and verifying that we didn't break one platform, we changed another, but that's part of the back end work that we need to do to automate builds and stuff like that. So that's a pretty exciting, step forward here. I expect that in continuing this update with like what's happening with the console runtimes and the bounty for that, with Xbox, being done here in the next couple of days, once that is completed and these PRs are merged, then my full attention will go to PlayStation, which is the last platform that we need to work with here. We did switch early on. Xbox is almost there, along with now the X12 available in the public repo, and then PlayStation is the next one, which should go a little quicker because there's less complication there. It's one chunk. It's two repos. The code there is some sharing of code between those, which we need to figure out. But for the most part, that'll be a quicker transition because there's less question about public versus private and stuff like that. So that's a hat change. That's the next step is that. And I'm trying to get it done as quick as possible here because we really need to move on to other stuff on the console side. So I think that's it from me at the moment. Do you want to move on to the next thing, or do you want to take some questions here as well?
We'll probably keep the questions till the end. I don't think we've got anything
Okay.
on. So, Dom, if you want to take over with the start in the new resources section.
Might help if I unmute. As we discussed last month, we were talking about a resources section. So some of my time this month has been focused on getting that up and running. And thanks to ArisTurtle again, Chris, for helping get both the doc side and the and the main site functioning so that the resources section looks pretty much identical on both now. And as hopefully some of you have seen, we've added quite a few resources already. And if you have any, obviously there's a submission link that sends an email to us, and we then can add that to the database. So and with the start kits, it's still on the last part of documenting everything inside the all the public functions inside the 2D start kit. I mentioned last week that the blank start kit is done, so it's just the last part. I think I should be able to have that done by the end of this week, like Sunday. So then it's just a case of a review and maybe merging that and making it live. I think that is an update from both of those. Yes, that's all from me.
Right, okay then. We might as well turn over the stage to our erstwhile friend and colleague. And now we're going to figure out how to do this again because he is here. So I will stop presenting, and Chris, if you want to take over, and the stage is yours.
Perfect. Let me just share my screen. There we go. So everyone, I'm Chris, ArisTurtle. Most of you, I think, know me from talking in the community. I'll post this. I made this really quick because Simon suggested it offline. But here are all my socials if anyone ever needs to find me on anything. But I primarily work specifically in MonoGame in the community, developing tools and tutorials and other assets for other game developers like yourself to actually make games, because those who can't do or teach or something, I don't know. But as far as what I'm here to talk about today is first will be MonoGame.Extended. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with MonoGame.Extended. It was originally started by Dylan Wilson. I probably should have had this up earlier. was started by Dylan Wilson as an extension to MonoGame to provide a bunch of like tools and layers on top of MonoGame that aren't implemented in MonoGame themselves for one reason or another. Like MonoGame isn't going to implement like a physics system because that goes outside the scope of a framework. So other libraries like MonoGame.Extended, they'll have things like that. MonoGame.Extended was a huge part of me learning MonoGame when I first came on to start learning this. So once I found out that the MonoGame.Extended repository had been kind of laid dormant for a few years, I reached out, and I'm now lead on the MonoGame.Extended repository. So if there's any questions about MonoGame.Extended, feel free to come to me. I'm still catching up to speed on a lot of the parts of MonoGame.Extended, but I should be able to answer pretty much most questions. And if not, I can point you to someone who can. The current focus right now in MonoGame.Extended is that it's going to be the tile map system. Currently, tile maps in MonoGame.Extended are locked exclusively to the tiled application, and I don't like that. So what I've been talking about with the other contributors in the Discord is implementing a system in MonoGame.Extended. So MonoGame.Extended is just a tile renderer, and it has an agnostic API that would allow you as the user to use a system like Tiled or LDTK or Ogmo or any other tile editor that you have to create your tile maps in those editors, whichever one you want to use. And then MonoGame.Extended just has an agnostic API that you import that file into and connect with. And then in MonoGame.Extended, we'll handle the rendering part of that. So that's going to be the next big focus in MonoGame.Extended for anyone following that. Along with MonoGame.Extended, this is kind of ancillary to it. It's kind of beside it. Dylan also originally created an application called Particle Factory, which is supported in MonoGame.Extended for loading files created in Particle Factory for creating particle effects in MonoGame. The problem is Dylan's kind of a hard person to get in contact with nowadays, and the source code for Particle Factory is not available. So I've had to basically to help those who are still reliant on that in MonoGame.Extended. I've been working on a replacement for Particle Factory, kind of building it from the ground up. And just to kind of show what it is, this is the editor. This is running 100% through MonoGame. You just come in here and you basically play around with the different values to build out whatever particles you might want for your game. Whatever for that, like this is a smoke particle effect. Here's one for creating like a spark glow effect. Plenty of modifiers to play with for gravity, velocity, drag, randomizing color changes, scale, etc. But this all runs 100% in MonoGame. So when you're creating the particles within the editor, what you see rendered on the screen is what you're going to see rendered inside your game when you open it up in the game to play. And yep, and that one crashed out. Let's try that again. Just open up the ring one. So this is pretty much at a point where it's finished. There's a few small tweaks I need to make to it, specifically for another game developer, Jeff Game Dev, if anyone's familiar with them from the MonoGame community or the MonoGame.Extended community. They are highly reliant on the particle system from MonoGame.Extended. So I'm currently working with them to take their old particle factory file spec and be able to import it into this new file spec so they can open in there. And once that's done, this is pretty much going to be finished. So this should be released shortly for the community to use. So hopefully everyone can make some really cool particle effects with it. I hope. But yeah, this is going to be the particle factory replacement. I did not use gum, Kyle. This is IMGUI or DRM GUI. I just needed something that I could implement super quick as a UI. So it's just using DRM GUI or IMGUI.net. I will, once this is released as like a version 1, I will switch focus on implementing this inside of an actual, probably Avalonia is what I'm going to go with, but inside an actual editor that's a little bit more polished looking than just using IMGUI. You could tell Vic. Vic knows this isn't gum. So outside of MonoGame.Extended and the particle engine, the other thing that I've been focused on that I know everyone, or I hope everyone is kind of following, has been the MonoGame 2D tutorial bounty, which is a new onboarding tutorial for people who are coming over into MonoGame for the first time. I've been building this tutorial out in public. So as I write each chapter and release it, I push it out and post it in the community for feedback on it. So you can go ahead and start reading it and give me feedback on this before it's fully submitted to the bounty. That way I can ensure that the things written for the tutorial are going to cover what the community also thinks is going to be good information for someone coming over into MonoGame. One important thing to note about this tutorial, though, is that the goal of this tutorial is it's not to learn C# first off. So, and it's noted in the tutorial that if your first time with C#, it provides the link to go the official route with Microsoft and their Learn C# tutorial series. So the tutorial does not focus on teaching C#. It focuses on teaching building games with MonoGame, and a lot of this is structured in a way that I kind of wish were the resource I had when I originally started working with MonoGame. At that time, a lot of it was go read some XNA documents or look at some existing samples and read through other people's open source code, which worked well for me because me reading through code is fine. But when I started learning MonoGame, I was coming from Unity at the time, and there's another game development community that I was in, and all of them use Unity, and I was trying to, I was talking about MonoGame with them, and I was trying to bring them over, and they were trying to compare a lot of things in Unity with MonoGame and how they could relate that when they did a switch over. So part of this tutorial kind of gives a focus on helping someone who might be switching from something like the Unity coming over. It's also got a focus on not only is it building a game throughout the entire tutorial, but a lot of this is going to be, like you'll see over here on the left, like with the sprite class, the animated sprite class chapters. Through these chapters, the reader is actually going to be building their own MonoGame library project along with the game, and the goal of that is for them to finish the tutorial and finish the game from the tutorial, but they're also at the end of it going to have a mini class library that they can use. That's kind of like a mini version of MonoGame.Extended or NES or something like that, that provides a lot of the common functionality that everyone's already going to implement, that they can then take that and use that to make their next game or extend that to what they need for their next game. So that's about it for me. That's what I'm working on. MonoGame.Extended, the particle engine, and the tutorial stuff. So I guess if there's any questions on that.
Not to mention all your apparently your MonoGame YouTube tutorials, which someone told me about.
I do have YouTube tutorials on MonoGame. I have not uploaded any in a while. The link is in the link tree that I posted. Hold on, I'll pull it up. I do have some video tutorials up here. A few things on using render targets for independent screen resolution. AADB collision detection, some stuff with ASprite.net, which is another library that I use, and doing screen resolution, independent screen resolution scaling with scale matrix instead of a render target 2D. I also have like a 1 hour video, almost 1 hour video, that completely goes in depth on the content pipeline, how it works, because that seems to be a very confusing question for a lot of people. So there's a full almost 1 hour video on that if you want to check that out. Along with that video, if you go to my website in the MonoGame tutorials section, there's an entire like 11 chapter document that goes along with this as a supplemental material that actually walks you through creating your own content pipeline extension.
It's brilliant.
It creates a worthless extension. I'll tell you that now. The extension's kind of worthless. It does a JSON extension when really all you need to do is just load JSON from file. But I use JSON because it's an easily understood format. So it's just an easy example to work with. But this will walk you through all the steps you need to create your own pipeline extension for MonoGame if you're interested in customizing your content import workflow for some custom assets or third-party software that you use that exports out some file format that you want to import. So.
One person did put a question up, is that whether you're going to turn the tutorial into a video tutorial at some point. I think we've discussed internally about having video series, but we wanted to get all the main tutorial articles out, and I guess also it'll be up to the author whether they wanted to go to the extra efforts of having a video series and having a video bounty to support it. But I think the main concern from the foundation perspective is maintenance. It's easy for once the bounties have been done, then it's the foundation's responsibility for keeping those tutorials up to date, because that content's taken internally. And while maintaining text tutorials and images and things is easy, changing video tutorials generally requires re-recording. So, did you have any thoughts on it, Chris?
No, I actually don't mind once this is all finished creating a video series that follows along with it. I'd actually kind of planned on it anyway. So, but I mean, that is going to be an issue like later down the road if, when MonoGame updates to, 4.0, I'm going to have to go back through and re-record videos to update it for 4.0 and things like that. So there is always that, but I did kind of have in the back of my mind that I was going to do a video series with this as well once it was finished.
Yeah, it's an interesting boundary between what the foundation manages and maintains, which is the framework, it's the website, it's the documentation, all the tutorial content things that we got posted on there, but we can't manage everything. So, and we have to be very keen with what resource we have. But this is also why we promote and support all the community members doing their own tutorials, which we'll support and will help publish and share information about. But is content that's managed by the community themselves. I mean,
this is difficult always, right? Even if you go and look for content for Unreal Engine or Unity, you always find these videos that are 5-6 years old and it's totally out of date to the current version of everything. It's like it's managing documentation and tutorials is a difficult process, and even the big studios don't have enough developers or writers or video content creators making content. It's difficult to maintain and things go stale, and it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Yep, so it's something we're always aware of. I think once we did the whole migration, the XNA migration, we were considering doing some shorts on some of them, but I think time sort of go away on that, but we may still return to it. But our preference will always is going to be the written word, and then relying on the community to make more interactive content beyond that. And we will have more tutorial bounties. Once we want to get the 2D and the 3D ones out the door, because that sets a baseline, and then we'll have more to add on to those for more advanced topics. And as ever, comment on the actual bounties issue that we have for tracking them all. If there's any requests or really critical things out there. And it's like saying, yeah, I've lost count of all the XNA MonoGame tutorials I've done over the years, which are still... No, they're out of date. There's stuff in there about Windows Phone, so...
Yeah.
So
I will say real quick, if you don't mind. Like I said, this for the the tutorial bounty for the 2D one, I am building this in public. So, like I said, whenever I have a chapter that's like the initial draft is finished and ready for review, I post an update to it in the actual issue for the bounty in the MonoGame repo. As well as there's a PR in my fork of the MonoGame docs website, which is where I'm building it at, and that's where the PR gets put. I post it in the MonoGame Discord itself. So absolutely feel free to go to that PR in the link, read through it, leave me any feedback, tear me apart. God knows Simon does every week. Because I do, a lot of this is written from my perspective. And some of you may be newer at MonoGame, or have more experience than me at MonoGame, or developing in general, and can offer a different perspective or a different take on the way I'm explaining things. So please leave feedback. Otherwise, if no feedback is left, then I just have to go off of what Simon gives me, and then go from there.
I'm a harsh but constructive critic.
Yeah. Simon's a fair critic.
Okay. If you want to relinquish the stage there, Chris, and...
Oh, yep.
Are there any more questions? We've only had one or two, I think, so far, and
this is it. We're heading now back into the Q&A section. And the only reason to put it on is just put a slide up and say, what are the questions and answers? And then back to Discord. There we go. I've lost the speakers. There we go. Yeah, I can't see the actual videos when I'm presenting, so I've not seen Chris change his hats every 5 minutes. So I missed the joke. I'll have to go back to the recording and see that. Oh, you're muted.
So we have a question.
I've used it a few times.
Yes, we have a question from Kelsom asking Tom about an Xbox PR coming soon. If so, does that mean that new GDX Xbox stuff will be ready soon for us to start using?
Yes. I mean, there is a GDK implementation that's already up there. It's in a separate branch in the repo that uses GDK and uses the native AOT stuff, but it still uses the old API. The old, API that I built basically, in 2014 or 2015 or something like that for Xbox. When we first started porting to console platforms. So that's the really old stuff, but it's using GDK, so it's usable right now. You can ship games on it, other than bugs, you can ship games on it. The new one is coming in the next couple of days, hopefully. It just depends on how much other problems I run into here and any issues with the other repo. But that'll be coming soon, and it'll use the latest MonoGame with the new native backend API. I'm basically kind of reusing as far as things like audio and input and window handling, that version is moving away from and this is internal technical stuff, like the Xbox used some of the WinRT stuff that you had on Windows, the UMP WinRT type APIs. And for a long time, that's what we use on the DirectX or the DX11 version of the XDK builds that we used to have for Xbox. For the GDK stuff, it's still using some of that WinRT stuff got moved across. So it's still there, but I'm kind of moving it all to a pure Win32 approach. The WinRT stuff is not that great. It screws up your call stack a little bit. Whenever you get crashes, you get a crash in a weird place in the call stack, and you don't get good crash information because of it. and it's unnecessary. The WinRT APIs didn't win out. They're not really needed. You can write Xbox code and Windows code. Now, GDK, the whole point of GDK was, hey, we made a mistake. That WinRT is not the right direction. We're going to go back to pure Win32. So we're pushing that stuff that direction. So even on Xbox, we're using pure Win32. Win32, a plain Win main, a normal Windows loop, Windows, message pump and that stuff, and using the GDK APIs for that stuff and not the WinRT APIs for that stuff. So plain C style APIs. So the move to that is what I'm finishing up, and once I have that, then I can kind of take a look and see how much of that stuff that I built for Xbox can be moved into the public repo alongside the DX12 support. Like I might be able to move the gamepad support straight across, so it's there. But then it brings up the question of, um, like where do we, how do we split things up? Do we have SDL2 with GX12? I have it at the moment on the public repo because it was the easy thing to do. Or should we also have a pure Win32 approach? So there's Win32, no SDL2, meaning there's no extra SDL, DLL that you have to ship or anything else like that. And it's, or any bulk from the SDL stuff, which SDL includes everything. At this point, SDL3 is like everything in the kitchen sink. And it's starting to replicate some of the stuff that we're doing. So it's a question of how far do we want to go with that, and I'm not sure yet. But yeah, that's the Xbox PRs will be coming soon, and with that, we'll be kind of done with Xbox for now, at least for the bounty that I'm working on, and moving on to PlayStation. Then once all those are done, then we're going to start doing a pass back through it, like the console APIs. We always built them at our studio as part of a need. Usually we had a client that came to us saying, hey, we want to port our game, to this platform. And we're like, well, conveniently, not conveniently, we don't have support for MonoGame to have support for this platform yet. So we're going to have to build it. And that's where, Brute came from. That's where these backends came from, is our studio building a port for somebody for a particular game to a particular platform. Like the reason why the Switch implementation of MonoGame works and exists is because back in the day, Celeste and Stardew wanted to get Switch, and they had the budget and the time to pay us to get the work done. So that's why that exists. And it's the same. It's always been the same. Here, the approach is a little different, where the foundation has some money incoming that can help us, prop those things up without having to wait for that. Also further in the past, the platforms did it. Like originally, the reason why we had it on PlayStation 4 was because Sony paid us directly to make a version of MonoGame that runs on PlayStation 4 because they really, really, really want to get all those XNA developers on PlayStation 4 because PlayStation 3 kind of failed for indies. So there's all these differences in funding, but now with the foundation, it's a little bit more straightforward, and we're still volunteering our time, and there's still some work that comes from enhancements for particular ports that we work on. But the plan is to, after we get this first bounty done of getting all these things done, all these platforms updated to native AOT and the new APIs updated, is to go back through all the platforms and fill out these places where we never had to do before because there was never a game that needed that feature. Like 3D texture support on consoles is spotty because I think on some of the platforms we never had to deal with it. So getting those done and making sure all the unit tests run on those consoles is going to be a big push after this. So long answer to simple question. Sorry. Do we want to go on to something else? Does the native AOT approach mean that it's still used opposed to Brute, or will Brute still be involved? Brute's still involved. There's some complications with using native AOT on some consoles, that are not technical. They're, policy based, and so Brute is still going to be a thing. Plus, there's trade-offs to both. I'll say the native AOT stuff on Switch works great. Performance-wise, I'm not totally sure yet. I haven't done a deep dive on performance there, but it seems to be generally okay. but I'm told that it doesn't perform as well as Brute in some cases. So the plan for us with Brute is to still develop it and still push it forward, and there's work being done with that, uh, you know, on different projects. But it's again a labor of love at this point. It's not very profitable for us to work on it, and we're not trying to make not that we're trying to make a profit on it, but it's hard to work on it when you have to figure out how you're gonna pay your electric bill this month. So that's so Brute's still being developed. We're going to push it forward. We still think it's a viable solution. There are definitely limitations with it and things that we want to improve. And it's something that across the industry it's sort of a problem. Like I know that other engines have had issues with running C# on consoles as well. Unity has their solution. So it's something that we're going to continue to work on. Native AOT, as great as it is still not a solution everywhere, but we hope that it will be soon.
We had another question from Orgs, actually well before, which was currently it is impossible to play compressed audio with seamless looping in Monogame. There's an issue that he linked to. This is problematic for long background music. What is the current roadmap for expanding audio support to other types, especially compressed types like ORG and MP3?
Right, and I think it's just it's a dumb thing in how we're. I think it. Where's the issue? Well, let me see if I can see it. Where's that thing out? There's a link in here somewhere. I'm sure there is. Yep, find it.
Yeah, it's been
Somewhere
posted.
in this chat.
8589.
Oh, issue 8589. Okay, that'll help me. That's easier than trying to find the link in chat. All right.
I think there's that one. There's also another one where if you set an option in the pipeline, it sort of cuts off like a 0.1 of a second in the audio, so it can't loop.
Right.
I see some
back and forth with Square Bananas on this as well. Yeah, I mean, I know that there was a problem there where it was the 80 PCM stuff and the block size requirement, and there's a way to fix that. It's a little difficult, but it's something that we just need to fix. I mean, there's not a reason why compressed audio can't loop. It can. I think it's just the way that we chose to do it has a problem. It's fixable, but it's one of those things that it's like, not everybody has the problem, or not people are not vocal enough, and it's like priorities with the foundation, but it's totally fixable. Just someone has to find the time, or the foundation needs to make it a priority to go fix that particular issue. It's difficult. I don't know how we decide to address those things. It's something that maybe we can put on the agenda to talk at the next meeting. Potentially to decide, like, is this an important issue that we need to fix immediately, or where our priorities are with that stuff. Unfortunately, we're still small enough where we just can't have everybody, or we can't address everything all the time. So it's challenging, to figure that out. There's some theme happening with the multiple hats, and I'm not sure what it is, but unfortunately, I can't play a part in it. So yeah, I realized my camera wasn't on. Let's see if it actually works. No, it doesn't work. That guy's still there. All right. So yeah, I'd love to see it fixed. It's just a question of when someone finds the time to fix it. It's totally fixable. It's just someone has to sit down and focus on it for a little while. I know that for me, that's not something I can work on at the moment, but yeah, maybe internally we need to talk about it and see how we can address it. Oh, so FFmpeg is the issue. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it could also be that we need to stop using FFmpeg for certain formats, or maybe we should fix FFmpeg locally. So yeah, that's one of those things that we need to figure out. And maybe with the native pipeline, we can deal with some of those things. Like, well, we know this format through FFmpeg has a problem. Can we use another simple library to do this, to encode this specific one in order to make it work properly in our case? So yeah, FFmpeg is a gigantic sledgehammer of a tool. So it's a lot, and especially when 90% of the audio that people try to use for MonoGame is it's either OGG or MP3 or it's raw waves. Almost everything else is not used, and the output formats are pretty straightforward as well. So maybe we can simplify. Maybe FFmpeg is too much of a tool for us if we don't need to go that far. So yeah, that's something to consider as well.
I don't mean to interject. I see a question in here.
No, go for it.
And that actually reminds me of something since I'm doing this in the tutorial stuff right now. Vertigo asks if there's any plans on extending MonoGame's sound effect pipeline, including natively effects like reverb and similar. I don't know what the foundation or as far as like what the foundation's response would be for that. For the tutorial right now, the actual chapter that I just finished writing was on sound effects and music and adding them to the game. And part of that chapter, I did do a callback to the Exact tool, which through Exact you would be able to do stuff like applying reverb and effects and things to your audio. It was basically a mini audio engineering studio, similar to what you have with like Fmod today. If there's any interest, because MonoGame does support Exact, you can create an Exact project today and import it into MonoGame, and it will work. So I guess I'll put the question out there. Even though Exact is a Windows-only tool, and it's an old tool that has been updated in a while, if there's people that are interested in learning like how you can install Exact on your current system now and use it, if there's enough people that are interested in that, I could write like a small. I mean, this is just like me personally, not like saying for the foundation, just like me personally and my personal stuff. I can write like a small blurb about that.
Will that work on Mac and Linux using Wine?
Theoretically, but I've never tried it.
Okay.
Well, the audio thing is I don't know, it's a little complex. The built-in audio system in MonoGame or even XNA is okay, but it's not great. It's very simple. You have dynamic sounds and dynamic sound effect instances and sound effect instances and sound. And that makes the whole system. And there's a little support for some reverb, and then you have Exact, which is kind of something that they bolted on. Exact was the great grandfather of things like Fmod, where the idea being that a sound engineer could use a tool to author sounds, and then a game can say, hey, play this sound, and doesn't have to worry about like, oh, the sound is actually playing 15 sounds randomly, with a fade out and, with this effect on it. But if the person happens to be in room A instead of room B, then it has less reverb or more. Like that was the whole idea, is that a sound engineer could author sounds that then the game can play. And that's where Exact came from originally, and that's where Fmod kind of took the reins and went forward with that. Exact as a tool was kind of depreciated. I guess it originally started with the XNA team or the Xbox team, and went to the public for XNA. And I know that Microsoft has told us in the past they can't share that code with us because it has licensed code inside of it they can't share with us. So there's legal entanglements that keep that from being something we can use or share. We can always ask them again. Maybe they've given up on that, or maybe everything's fine now. But my guess is that we're never getting that code. And the question is, do we want it really? It is an old tool. It's not the easiest tool to use. It's very inconvenient in a lot of ways. It is Windows only. And all that said, it's like there is a good alternative right now. It's called Fmod. And for an indie studio that hasn't shipped anything, it costs $0. And I think that, how does it work? It costs nothing if you're under a certain budget or something like that. Is that
I
true?
think it's 100,000 a year. I think.
Yeah,
Like if
making
you're under
less,
100,000 a year.
yeah, and it's having to pay for Fmod is a good problem to have. It means that your game is selling and you're making money, so you would have some money to pay. So, not that I'm a shill for Fmod, I don't care, what you want to use, but I'm saying that the indie pricing for Fmod, which is over here, If your development budget is under $600K, it can be free or $2,000 depending on, to use it, depending on the details there. I don't know what the details are there for that. And yeah, you don't get any support or anything, but it's pretty straightforward. And if you have to kit consoles, there's more that you have to pay. But it's worth it. It gives you a tool that works. Yeah, Exact is free, and you can use it too, and we'll continue to support it. But I don't know if we're going to spend a lot of time investing more time into making it better, because the only way to make it better is going full bore, like a new editor, a new runtime with the modern improvements, making the editor work on all platforms, and that's just beyond what we want to do. I mean, that sounds like a great business model for anybody that wants to start a new business of making an indie, flavored version of Fmod that's cheap. But I think Fmod already is an indie flavored version of Fmod that's cheap, for the most part. So yeah, it just depends on what you're trying to do. But Fmod is used everywhere. It's supported on all the engines, and and I know that a lot of professional audio studios, know Fmod and use Fmod, and they prefer Fmod. I know that some have had difficulty working with Exact, and doing that. And if you plan to hire a studio to do your audio work and your music and your sound effects, they'd rather use Fmod. So that's the only reason why we haven't gone further with that, is for that reason. And some people just want to write their own systems, and that's what the low level sound stuff is in the engine. Could we add support for reverb and stuff like that? To an extent, the most that we can really do, so we don't have a full under the hood. There's not a full mixer or anything. We're not generating reverb. We're using the features of the platform. So so to get reverb, we would really, and reverb that works cross-platform, which that's a problem that we've had with MonoGames.Extended, is that the reverb sounds one way on one platform and one way on another, because we're using the platform's reverb implementation, which can have slight differences. Even though it's the same settings, you can get slight differences and you get different results. That's where Fmod is nice, because Fmod is its own software audio processing system. You get the same results on every platform across the board every time, and it performs well and has all these features. So for us to compete with Fmod, that's again a whole other realm of budget, to be able to do that. So yeah, that's the complication there. Exact's still there. We're going to continue to support it the way that it is. I don't know if we're going to spend a bunch more time improving it beyond what's there. And adding some more support for reverb and stuff like that, we can maybe do. We've talked about maybe starting to depend on F Audio, as a back end instead of using what we have. But there's some complications there with native platforms, and it gets us back into dependencies. Like, well, we can't support this platform until F Audio supports this platform, and I hate being in that position. So yeah, those are the things that are complicated there. I'm not sure if there's another solution other than, it's saying like use Fmod. It's out there. There's a good C# wrapper for it. It's available. It probably should be something that's on our resources page. If it's not already, I don't know if it is or if it isn't. But pointing somebody to the Fmod wrapper for, and this is why the resources page is there, is to make people aware of all these extensions that are out there that can help you build your games. Because the whole point of this is to be able to help build your games, by piecing in the elements that are useful to you and not getting served. Here's an engine, you have to do it the way the engine wants to do it because there's no other way to do it, kind of thing. Yeah, actually, there's nothing in the resources for audio. We should totally be adding, those Fmod, then C#.
Yeah, I'm not a shill for Fmod either.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. But I would actually recommend using Fmod over trying to use Exact. It was just the suggestion from the tutorial. But speaking of Fmod and like resources,
Look, here's one right there. And Martin
yeah,
Ford wrote it, so there's that one.
Whereas that one, I have I have one called TinyFmod, which is a really
Mhm.
small wrapper, and there's also the Celeste Getting Started guide.
Yeah,
The
Celeste uses
Celeste
it.
team released theirs. Yeah,
Yeah,
they released the entire Fmod project. So if anyone wanted to go look at like how Celeste did their Fmod project with Power Up Studio, they can go and take a look at that and get like an actual real world example of
yeah.
what it looks like.
Yeah, Power Up Studios is great. They did all that work. We worked on the Celeste ports on all the platforms. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that they use Fmod throughout there, and that worked out great for them. And having to pay for a license is great. It means you're making money. At least how Fmod prices it. But yeah, we should let's get all these resources into the resources list, because those are the things that people need to know. That hey, you have solutions for these things. Um, they're out there and they're easy to integrate, and you can have it running in 20, 30 minutes and be worried about like making your audio and not about, well, what tool should I integrate or how do I get better audio. I think it makes sense. Audio tools, audio is always overlooked in games. Everybody talks about graphics and very few people talk about audio, but it will change a game completely to have just the right sound at the right place. It'll make it feel bigger and more important, and it's important to highlight audio. So I think using a professional tool that is well written is better than kind of cobbling together what you can through old tools like Exact. But Exact also works. It's just you have to work a little harder.
It's certainly one of those things which is an end game development. It's actually something you need to get right. Ultimately, a player should be able to close their eyes and feel where they are in a game if you're doing it right, and adding to the experience. And also for those players who can't play with sight and need audio and other things to be able to take advantage of games. Things like Gears of War and Halo do this very, very well, where they take accessibility to the heart of everything to make sure as many players can play it. And not everyone has the budget to do so, but it's certainly something that should always be considered when building these games to try and expand that audience.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, we're getting close to the hour. I think the only trailing question we had, which was coming from the community, is that there's always been an ongoing talk around how the foundation can better publicise or put forward the work we're doing. I mean, the team's working really hard to try and do everything we can. We're not always as forthright maybe about trying to put that forward, or commit to sometimes not as active on the site to showcase what we're actually doing. So I suppose it's an open question to the community, and we welcome feedback in any of the channels, and we listen to a lot of them, about if there are any things you think we can do better, or ways we can announce things more or show there's progress going on, because we'd hate to think all the hard work we're doing is going unnoticed. And the room goes wild. I always love it.
We have to wait for people to finish typing.
I'll say for some reason I actually seem to be a point of contact for a lot of people in the community, as like a go-between between me and you guys. I'm not sure how that happened.
Yeah.
So, but I do get a lot of questions that people ask me about how active MonoGame is now with the foundation, and the perception around that. And I do think, like, I think for me, as because I'm just another community member as well. Like I have just as much insight as everyone else. I can't look behind the curtain. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of the work is done on the console side, on the private side, that we can't see that in public. So in the public repo, we're not seeing as much activity. Whereas in the private repos, there may be more activity going on there, more discussion there happening. So I think that could kind of be part of the perception problem with the community, is that for those of us who don't have the console access and can't see the private side of the MonoGame SDK stuff, we can't look behind that curtain and see all that activity that's happening. We can only look at what's happening in the public repo, and that's very little, or it looks little, but it's after the fact of the console stuff being ported over. If that makes sense, I'm trying to explain that the best I could.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some of that. There's definitely also that, this is not anybody's full-time job, unfortunately, at the moment. So it's always the things that we're shoving in there between stuff. And even though we have some funding and we're trying to use it, we're also trying to, stretch it as much as we can. And it helps with the donations that are coming in. It's the most that we've ever gotten. It's great. And I know that later this year, I'll probably be reaching out to some successful MonoGame devs and looking to get some more donations coming in, because we'd like to be things that we can focus on 100%, but it's always going to be difficult to do that, and especially in the last couple of months where there's been a lot of life stuff happening for everybody, and it's also just the holidays and everything. We're finally getting into the real swing of the new year. So you're going to see things pick up here as we've gotten past this holiday period and some of the changes in the world. So yeah, I think that you're going to see more happening. And some of it, yeah, is unfortunately behind closed doors. Um, and our push right now is to really. This is also part of the reason why it's like I stopped hemming and hawing about issues like, well, how much should be public and how much should not be public. We definitely need to do a little bit more of a move fast and break things if that makes progress happen, especially if the break is not something that's fatal. So you'll be seeing more stuff here soon. And yeah, it's something we heard from you guys, and feel free to reach out to us in public channels. It's definitely, we want to keep things transparent and make things apparent to everybody, what's happening and why. And it's just not that many of us, and a lot of us have day jobs that we have to focus on, unfortunately. But the more that as donations increase, that lets us be able to spend more time on this. I know that Dom would love to work full time on this, but it's hard to do that, and then also, you know, uh, be able to handle everything, because it's not just the public repo, which has a ton of stuff happening all the time. There's how many platforms that we target, plus publicly, plus the consoles. So there's a lot going on, and there's been a lot more movement on documentation, I guess, in a lot of ways than there has been on code. Mostly because the
Yeah.
code stuff is a lot of low-level, deep kind of cleanup stuff. Because the higher level model game is actually working well. There's not a lot to do there other than what we're talking about in the future. I think I don't think we're ready to announce it yet, but the next open hours in the next meeting, there will be more to say about some future changes in the content pipeline, that have been, in discussions and worked on in the background. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more changes here soon that'll kind of, things that have been in the works for a while, I guess. That's what I mean.
Yep, I think someone's even made a comment about Vulkan support, which, as far as I'm aware, Tom, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have it in the repo. It's just in dire need of testing and finishing off some implementations.
I think there's maybe a small bounty there of just making it available. Like, it's currently not being baked into any kind of NuGet, so that makes it hard for people to try. It's not in a NuGet, so we need to push that into a NuGet so it's actually available to people. Even though it's not complete, there's also the fact that it's not a complete platform. We don't have an audio solution for that native platform, and we need to get one. What I might do, just to move things forward at least, is I might bring the stuff that we have for Xbox, which is an X-Audio 2 implementation, the native implementation of X-Audio 2 that's been on Xbox for a long time. We've shipped lots of titles on. I might pull that into the public repo as well, just so that we have a native audio solution that we can then pair with Vulkan and the other stuff, so we have a solution there at least for now. We can have more discussions about, should we use OpenAL still or not? Should we use F Audio or not? But at least having some audio solution there would make the Vulkan package a more complete package and something you could actually ship a game on, which right now without audio you can't ship a game on it. So we need to have something, and then we need to start evolving it, because like it brings up the whole question of like, well, how do you decide what to use? Like, is it a mix and match system? Like, well, I want to use OpenAL, but I want to use SDL2 for input, but I want to use, Vulkan for graphics, but no, I want to use DirectX 12, but I want to use Xaudio 2 for audio. It's like, is it a mix and match thing? I don't like that. It's too many complications. So that's something we need to work out because we have endless amount of choices. We just have to decide what direction is best. And I think kind of platforms is still best, deciding what platforms make sense. A pure Windows DirectX approach, when you're trying to build just a DirectX game just for Windows and targeting nothing else, is one approach. Another approach is a more open source, OpenGL, OpenAL approach, where you're targeting Windows, Mac, and Linux. And you might have reasons to do one versus the other. So I still think that's probably the right approach. So we might end up needing to have some audio implementation that is, cross-platform as far as PC platforms, maybe even mobile. So yeah, we might end up having to re-implement a native audio implementation, using OpenGL on the native side. We were trying to avoid that, but maybe that's the right solution. I don't know. It's stuff to discuss still.
Yep, and we've also discussed about potentially getting preview NuGet sorted out, but we need to make sure that that works, and we're not going to get knocked off by NuGet for doing it too much. But it's something in progress.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So anyone else? Any other questions or queries? Just feel free to keep in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it, and also into the MonoGame Discord as well. But I think we'll have to draw to a close now because, as ever, we won't stop talking because we love to engage, love to communicate, blah blah blah. So I can't stop talking now. That was it. So this is it from the Foundation team, and thank you to Chris for hopping on and talking about all things MonoGame, Extended and otherwise, and heralding forward
Thanks
all the
for having
community
me.
work you're doing and getting things going. And I think from the rest of us now, it's good day and good night and good morning, Tom.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Right,
Later, everybody.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.